It is Ubuntu's 20th anniversary, and believe me or not, I was there when the first version dropped 20 years ago. I only started using Ubuntu with 6.06, but 4.10 wasn't far away, and I actually gave it a shot back in the day just to see what the first version is. Now, Ubuntu 24.10, which is what we're gonna talk about today, isn't as revolutionary as 4.10 was back in the day, but it's still a very nostalgic release full of nice little touches and some actual real improvements for day-to-day use. So let's see what's new in Ubuntu 24.10, and let's hear this message from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by TuxCare. They offer solutions to keep your Linux fleet secure and updated, notably with kernel live patching, meaning your Linux kernel stays up to date automatically without reboots, downtime, or disruptions. They're also known for delivering extended lifecycle support for enterprise Linux distros that go end of life, like, for example, Oracle Linux 7. This version will be end of life at the very end of 2024, on December 31st, meaning you won't get any free security updates for that system. And if that deadline is too close for comfort, TuxCare can actually provide you with 5 more years of security patches for a comprehensive list of packages. That should give you plenty of time to plan a migration to a newer version or to another system. All of this happens with one single script that connects you to TuxCare's repos without needing you to reboot. So, if you have machines running Oracle Linux 7, click the link in the description below to give a shot to TuxCare's extended lifecycle solutions and just buy yourself a few more years to upgrade or switch to another system. So first, let's talk about the visual changes. The installer hasn't changed one bit, maybe a few slides have new images, but that's about it. It's the same process, but that brand new installer from Ubuntu was pretty good looking, pretty nice, easy to understand, legible, so nothing to say here, it's good. So, visual changes for Ubuntu 24.10. The first one we're gonna have is this 20 years mention. It's on the login screen, it's on the boot screen, it's not that interesting, but it is a visual change that we have to list. Now, if you heard that properly, this is the boot sound that you used to have in Ubuntu 4.10. It has been, well, added to this version of Ubuntu. Fortunately, you can disable it if you don't want it. Startup sound, just turn it off. I think it's awesome. I think it sounds really good. I'm well used to it for nostalgia's sake, so I'm gonna leave it on for this experience. I'm probably not gonna hear it ever again in this test run. Now, another graphical change that you might notice is the addition of this warty brown color, which not only turns your panel white, but also gives you that little half coffee, half chocolate kind of color that used to be the one that appeared in Ubuntu 4.10 warty warthog. Since GNOME isn't necessarily the most colorful of desktop environments, you won't see it a lot. It's just the accent color. I think it looks really cool, and I'm really nostalgic for it, but also a lot of people are probably going to think it's really freaking ugly. You also have plenty of newer wallpapers, like for example this celebratory one with all the old and new logos that you can have from Ubuntu. You have the previous wallpaper for warty warthog, but this one is kind of the same with the 20 years Ubuntu celebration. And you have, obviously, a bunch of wallpapers that are tailored to this new version of Ubuntu, Oracular Oriole. Now, I wish they had added various themes to look like what Ubuntu 4.10 actually looked like, or to look like maybe 6.06, 8.04, maybe even the nice 10.04, and I think it was 12.04 that was sort of half purple, half white with those chocolate accent colors. Those themes were really cool at the time. It looked really nice. Every time Ubuntu changed their default theme, it was a big event, and I wish they had added that again, not just the 4.10 thing. But yeah, if you're nostalgic for that era, it's a nice little fun touch, but it's definitely not going to impact how you use your system. Now we do have some Ubuntu-specific changes in this version as well. The first one is related to the dock. First, when you right-click a Snap app, you'll see that the menu has been tweaked a little bit. You now have this little header telling you which app you clicked on, which I guess is useful if you don't remember what you did. But you also get this app details option, which opens the the app page in the App Store, in the App Center that Ubuntu has for snaps. It only works for Snap applications, not for applications installed through deb packages, so it's only gonna work for Firefox, Thunderbird, the App Center itself, and a few other things. But I guess that's useful if you want to know if there's an update, if you want to switch the channel to something like a beta or an Edge channel or something like that. Another improvement is how Snap's updates are handled in the dock. For example, here, if I update Firefox, we're gonna see that it gets a little progress bar right there that shows you the update. Previously, the icon would have disappeared from the dock and be re-added to the dock afterward, which obviously was not super elegant. Now you get this little progress bar. It's much better. There is another interesting change that you'll see here. If you click update on an application that is currently open, for example here the Snap Store, it's gonna tell me that it can't be updated because obviously it is currently running. So I'll have to close it for that update to apply. Now, still in the Ubuntu-specific area, in the Snap Center, you now have the option in the Manage tab to uninstall an application. Instead of having to go to its app page and uninstall it, you can now do it straight from there, which I guess is a little bit of a time saver. That's something you had in GNOME software. In the list of installed apps, you had the option to remove them immediately from there, which I think is a better way to do it. Now, another Ubuntu-specific application you'll find in 24.10 is the Security Center. This is the first implementation of this application, and for now, it only lets you enable the new permissions system that is totally experimental for Snap applications. What this permission system does is basically when you try to do something that is confined for a specific Snap, like for example, I want to upload a specific file, it's gonna ask me which permissions I want to grant this Snap app. So for example, I can give it read access to my entire desktop folder, or just the requested folder and none of its subdirectories. You can allow this behavior always, you can allow this behavior once or deny it, and you have more options to give it write permissions, execute permissions. You can give it permission once or always, and you can even give it a custom path pattern if you want. It's a very complete system right now, probably not implemented in the most user-friendly or understandable way. I'm pretty sure a regular user will just not understand any of this or any of that, so it needs to be refined. And of course, once you set up those permissions for a specific app, you can find them back in the Security Center. They are triaged by folders, which I think is weird. Like, you go to your home folder and then you see what rules there are and you can just delete it. You can't modify it, you can just delete it, meaning that the next time you reopen Firefox and try to do the same thing, you're gonna get the same window to pick another behavior. Probably would be better if you could tweak the permissions here instead of delete them and have to re-add them afterwards with another configuration. Also, not sure about this, like why is this presented here with folders and not with apps? And also, it does not mix in permissions that you would find in the settings themselves. Permissions like being allowed in search, opening notifications, stuff like that. Like those permissions, why are they all here and not all in here on a per app basis? Like, you now have two places to check for various permissions that you gave to various applications. Not sure that's a good way of doing it, but yeah, probably should be fused in the exact same place instead of being split in two different places. Now, in the future, this application will also gain the controls for the firewall, which is nice, a graphical way to tweak the firewall, that's cool. You'll also get options to manage an Ubuntu Pro subscription, which is useful because it's free for personal computers and you get security updates on LTS releases of Ubuntu, so not too bad either. Right now, this thing is pretty bare bones. The implementation of what it tries to do is pretty bad, but this is going to improve. So for a first draft, I mean, I see where they're going with it. It's going to be a useful app for Ubuntu. Okay, so now let's move on to GNOME 47, because that's what Ubuntu 24.10 ships with. It's the latest version of GNOME. So obviously the main headline feature of GNOME 47 was the accent colors. This is not new to Ubuntu users, you already had those. The only difference here is that these accent colors are plugged with the settings portal. The colors have changed a little bit because they switched to the implementation that GNOME has, so these are the GNOME colors, apart from the warty brown color that Ubuntu added to this specific edition. Now, of course, this implementation of accent colors suffers from kind of the same problems that I already outlined on GNOME 47. For example, this version of Parabolic, a video downloader app, is a snap. It does respect that accent color properly, which is good, but Kate, installed as a snap as well, does not respect these colors. So KDE apps technically should handle the settings portal and be able to follow this accent color, but right now, just like in GNOME 47, they don't. So it's not great as an implementation yet. It will probably improve over time. Right now, it's not the best. Another GNOME change is the dialogues. Dialogues have been revamped a little bit. They now have split floating buttons instead of having the two buttons quartered at the bottom. Here you now have this kind of look. I think it's nice. It won't change how you use your computer. It kind of looks macOS-like a little bit, I think, but I think it's also much clearer where to click and where the buttons are, so not bad. Another interesting change is hardware acceleration in the screen recording feature. So now you can record your screen and it's gonna use your GPU to do so, which I think is pretty nice. It's going to result in probably higher quality recordings, but also it's gonna tax your CPU less, meaning that your system will be more responsive and probably these recordings will be higher quality. Now you'll also notice that in Nautilus, the file manager for Ubuntu and for GNOME in general, the sidebar has been revamped a bit. Now you have all the system places up top and all your own little favorites at the bottom. And all the disks will also appear here, meaning that you no longer have need for the other locations thing at the bottom, which saves you a click. You also have a brand new network page that lets you connect to any network server and will list all your previous network connections. Another interesting change here is the fact that Nautilus will now be used as the file picker when trying to select a folder or a file to upload or somewhere to save, which is interesting. You now get the exact same sidebar, you get the exact same view modes and sorting options as in Nautilus. You can now create new folders, you can search in that file picker, you even have some specific options. The interface looks better, it is more in line with the rest of GNOME applications. And this also means that every new improvement to Nautilus will also make its way to the file picker / file saving dialog, which is probably better for everyone. Now, in terms of the settings, you have a new accessibility option in pointing and clicking, which lets you activate a window when you hover it, so you don't have to click on it to actually interact with its elements. You also now can view the keyboard layouts in the keyboard settings, just to check where your keys are positioned and what which key does exactly. Online accounts also received some love, notably for Microsoft 365 accounts. You can now connect to your email, your calendar, your contacts. You also have auto discovery of your settings. For example, here if I type this kind of stuff, it's going to auto discover the IMAP server for Gmail. If I type Gmail correctly, it's going to automatically fill all of this stuff for you, and it's also going to work for your own personal servers as well. Same goes for WebDAV. When you fill in the server address, it will automatically try to populate everything related to that, so you don't have to enter every CalDAV or CardDAV address manually. You might have to do so if it's not saved in a usual location, but by default, it's gonna try to fill this in for you. If you want to learn more about all the changes in GNOME 47, I made a dedicated video back when that new version released. Ubuntu doesn't remove anything from GNOME, they just don't ship with some specific default applications, but all the performance improvements and the under-the-hood changes that I mentioned in that GNOME 47 video will also apply to Ubuntu 24.10. Now, there are also a bunch of changes under the hood. The main one will be that Wayland will now be the default for everyone including NVIDIA users. That's right, with the latest NVIDIA drivers that are available in Ubuntu's repos, namely version 550 and 560, you get Wayland support that is decent enough that anyone could use it. Of course, you can still move back to X11 if you prefer, but right now Wayland is the default for everyone. Of course, you really should get used to Wayland because X11 doesn't have another 10 years of life in it. It's unmaintained, it is utterly insecure, so yeah, distros like Ubuntu are going to ditch it in the next 5 years max. Wayland is still not perfect, but it's getting better, so do give it a shot at every new version that you upgrade to, because chances are it's already good enough for everything that you do. Another thing that Ubuntu adds in this new version is sysprof, which is a system profiling tool that lets you basically monitor how much CPU, memory, disk, network, energy, etc. an application or a system uses, how it uses your graphics. Basically, it's a profiling application that lets developer improve and optimize their apps on Ubuntu. They decided to pre-install that by default, even though it's only going to be useful for very specific use cases, but if you're a developer, you want to develop apps on Ubuntu, at least you'll have this pre-installed and all the background tooling that you might need to make all of this work. Now, Ubuntu 24.10 also comes with apt 3.0, which is the command line utility you can use to install, remove, and update regular Debian packages. This thing looks much better than it once did, with colors being used to show you what is going to be added, what is going to be removed, and things like that. So here, obviously, I'm trying to install the Ubuntu desktop meta package, which will install KDE on that system. It also has a better layout for suggested packages, things you could or might want to install. The layout is much better. Everything is just a lot nicer and a lot more legible than previous versions of apt. Now, of course, Ubuntu 4.10 comes with the latest version of the kernel, 6.11, and it also comes with the Mesa drivers version 24.2.3, so the latest stable version at the time this distro is coming out. And you also have access to the NVIDIA drivers 550 for the newest stable version and 560 for the latest features version, which will have much better Wayland support. So if you use an NVIDIA GPU, do use the 560 if your card supports it. It's going to be much, much better. And well, that's going to be it for Ubuntu 24.10. They keep going their own route and their own direction, and if you have no problem with that snap-based ecosystem, it's actually starting to be a pretty comfortable and pretty usable place to be in. They still have very good performance, they have a good implementation of GNOME, and if you're not adverse to snaps, Ubuntu is still a very competent distribution. This is not the one I would recommend to someone who wants to learn about Linux. The main reason is because everything you learn related to snaps on this distro will not apply to most other distributions, which pretty much all decided to go with Flatpak instead. So everything you learn in terms of how you manage your system with snaps and the graphical tools around them is going to be useless when you try your hand at other distributions, unless you actively want to replicate using snap on other distros, but they are not tailored for that. And snaps might actually not be properly sandboxed on these other distros as well, because they might not come with app armor. So I wouldn't recommend Ubuntu for beginners anymore, because they're just too far away from the main rest of other consumer-facing Linux distributions. But if you enjoy Ubuntu, if you enjoy snaps, if you like their kind of ecosystem, I think 24.10 is fantastic. It's full of nostalgia, full of cool features. The direction Ubuntu goes towards is also their own, but it's a nice one. They're really trying to build all those graphical tools around their distro. I think it's solid. I recommend using it if you're an Ubuntu user. If you hated Ubuntu and snaps, they're just entrenching themselves in their positions, so you're probably not going to enjoy this release either. Chances are you will enjoy this message from our sponsor though. You all know about them by now. I've been talking about them at the end of my videos for more than 2 years, which shows how dedicated I am to showcasing their products. They're really good. They're computers that ship with Linux out of the box. Laptops, desktops, You decide. They have a wide range of devices. You can configure most of the components inside. You can have your own custom keyboard layout, your own logo, laser etched on your laptop, and they will basically fit every price point and every need. And you know that their computers run Linux really well because that's the point of the entire thing. I only use their devices these days. My entire channel, my podcast, my videos, everything is run from one of their laptops, and all my gaming needs are served from one of their desktops. So if you need a new computer, you need to run Linux on it, and you want to support a company that actively contributes to Linux support for hardware, click the link in the description below and get yourself something from Tuxedo. They're really, really good. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. You know what to do to help the channel grow. There are plenty of buttons underneath this video player. Click them, subscribe, turn on the bell, write a comment, everything. You know how the YouTube algorithm works. And if you really want to support the channel, there are plenty of links in the description to do just that. You'll get some really cool advantages from $1 a month, so do check those out. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!